everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Some Things, Some Places at Certain Times. This episode is going to be about the TV series on Apple TV Plus, C. Now, if you're listening to this on Spotify, you might not notice. If you're listening to this on YouTube, then it might be pretty obvious, but I am recording an actual video to go with the audio for this. So if you want to watch it on YouTube, there's something to look at. If not, or if you're listening on Spotify, that's totally fine. This is still a podcast. I'm not really going to show anything on this. I'm just kind of testing it out, seeing how I can expand this, maybe add some more visuals to it in the future. So this is just very basic, and it is pretty much just going to be me talking. So let's get into it. This TV series starring Jason Momoa as the main character, Baba Voss, and his wife, Magra, played by Hera Hilmar. This show has a lot of actors that I didn't really know anything about, that I never heard of or never seen. The only people I really knew were Jason Momoa and Dave Bautista, who comes in season 2. A couple other side characters like Nina Giri, who is in The Handmaid's Tale, but she's a pretty small character in this series. Alfre Woodard looks familiar to me. I've seen her before, but I don't know a whole lot about her. But other than that, I don't really recognize any of the actors in this, right? So it was a lot of new faces to me, and I think they all did really well. A lot of great acting, especially with the main characters. Some of the other main characters who play the children of Baba Voss and Magra, Kofun and Haniwa. Their actors are Archie Madekwe and Nesta Cooper. I never saw them before, and they did a great job as well as Sylvia Hooks, who plays Queen Kane, and the lead witch finder, Tamakti June, played by Christian Camargo. I love those characters. They're all really good, and they're really good at being really bad too, especially Sylvia Hooks. She plays a great villain in this. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, even with all the faces I didn't recognize. The plot, generally, if you haven't seen it yet, of course, I'll keep this spoiler free at first. So if you haven't seen it, basically, the world has only about 2 million people left. It's hundreds of years in the future. Most people have died, obviously. That's why there's only 2 million people left. But they are also blind because of some disease, that the one that wiped out most people also caused blindness somehow. And so that's kind of the world we're in. It's like a primitive future. So it is very science fiction. They do still have, there are remnants of the ancients, as they call them, modern day or advanced humans, sighted humans, importantly. And basically, Baba Voss and Magra have these twin children, Kofun and Haniwa, who can see. So they are being hunted down by Queen Kane and her witchfinders, their witchfinder general, Tamakti June, and basically to find them, because sighted people are witches in this society, and they're trying to get rid of them. But it obviously, things evolve as the show goes on. The start is basically they're kind of on the run. They're hiding from the witch hunters, running away from the witch or the witch finders, and so you have that kind of like they're trying to get to a certain place where they'll be safe, and the enemy is pursuing them, which is a kind of a setup or a setting that I quite like from shows. I think it's good because it has a very clear direction, and it keeps things fresh and moving. And then in season 2 and 3, they stay a bit more in some of the same locations as the story evolves. It kind of reminds me of how in The Walking Dead, in the first couple seasons, they were moving around a bit from place to place, but in the later seasons, they spend a lot of time in the same area, like the town Alexandria, in the later seasons. So that's just a comparison I make. If you have seen, or if you've played the video game Horizon Zero Dawn or Forbidden West, or if you've seen the series Tribes of Europa, which is made by the creators of Dark, the German series on Netflix. My opinion, the best series on Netflix. But this other show, Tribes of Europa, was only meant for one season with 6 episodes, which I think is a crime. I love that show. I wish it kept going. But this show, see, is very reminiscent of those, that kind of primitive, far future science fiction, which has traces of ancient advanced human technology. So I find that really interesting. It's like the kind of genre that I'm really into, because I just love science fiction in that way. So that's kind of the vibe I get from this show. So if you're into those things, then I think you'll definitely be into this one as well. And the action, it is very intense. There is a lot of violence. It is quite graphic at times, but I think it's really good to see the way the blind people interact with their world, the way they engage in combat, whether it's one-on-one fighting or just a few people, or if it's like an army and a whole group of people fighting in a big battle or in a war. I think it's all really interesting, the ways they came up with these things for them to interact with the world around them, and the way that being blind isn't a disability to them. In some ways, being sighted is, and they say like your vision blinds you or something, or it's just of course it's taboo in the society that they're in, which is why the witch finders are hunting after them. Or in later in the show, when you encounter other areas, they're not as religiously superstitious, but they still know that sighted people would have certain powers that could destabilize their government or something like that. So they're still basically outlawed in whatever region they go to. I think it's all really interesting. So the blind people are not disabled. That's just the way everyone is, and they get around just fine. And they know how to use their other senses to the best of their abilities. And so the sighted people who come into the show, the children, sometimes find themselves at a disadvantage. Sometimes they're advantaged, of course, because they can see. But yeah, it's really interesting to have a whole world where people are blind, and to see how they've evolved and live with that. So I think it's really interesting. It seems really practical to me. Of course, I'm not blind. I don't know if a blind person or people consulted on this show, but it's really interesting. And of course, the actors themselves aren't blind, and they do a lot of stunts that would probably be quite dangerous. So yeah, it's all done really well, and for the most part believable. It is science fiction, so you have to take that into account. But I really like it. For a TV show, I give it 8 out of 10. It's my type of genre. It fits my interests really well. If you're not into the extreme violence or into the futuristic, primitive future, science fiction kind of stuff, then maybe you won't be as interested in it. But to me, I give it 8 out of 10. It's one of my favorite shows that I've seen for quite some time, and I didn't really know anything about it until I heard the commercials for season 3, which just came out. The finale came out last night as of when I'm recording this. So yeah, I just knew because this final season was coming out. I heard about it, so I went back and watched it from the start with my dad. I don't think he liked it as much as I do. He might give it a 6 or a 7 out of 10, but that's the rating I give it, and I really liked it. So if you're into some of the stuff that I've described on the series before, then I think you'll really like it. So that is 8 out of 10 for C on Apple TV+. Now, let's get into spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you should go watch it. Now, if you have seen it, let's talk a bit more detail. So season 1, of course, their end goal is the House of Enlightenment, right? They're trying to get to the place that Gilles Morel, I never quite understood how his name was supposed to be spelled, so I'm not seeing his name on the character list here when I Google it. But Gilles Morel, right? He's the father, the biological father of Kofun and Haniwa, and he sets up this place and tells them, you have to come here and we will use our gift of vision to like restore the world, basically, to help the world and use the knowledge that was left by the ancients, the advanced humans, and kind of rebuild things. So they are always heading towards that goal, and the Witchfinders are chasing after them, trying to stop them. So I really like plots when they have like a physical location to get to. I think it makes things very clear. They have a direction to head toward, and we know what their end goal is. And then you have someone chasing them or obstacles that get in their way. I think that's a really good setting for this, and it makes a lot of sense. And the battles that they have along the way, I think, are really good. It looks really cool, and even though it's about blind people, a lot of the show is really visual because, when they're fighting, they have to be so quiet. So you kind of rely on what's on screen to know what's going on. And yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Seasons 2 and 3, I still really liked. And the politics of it all is really interesting. And a lot of the characters and the dialogues in season 2 and 3 I like even better. But it is a bit more static because they spend most of the time in the same few settings. But they do still have good plots. It didn't ever feel like it was getting stale. Like, it all made sense. Season 2, when you have Dave Bautista come in, I thought he did a great job. I thought this character really fit him as a person. I thought it plays to his strengths, and I think he did a great job of sounding like Jason Momoa. Like, you could tell they were brothers just by the way they talk. So that was really good on his part. So I applaud Dave Bautista on his acting abilities for this series. And of course, he wants to get revenge on his brother, which involves opening a war on a second front, which of course is a challenge. And the final battle of season 2 I thought was really cool to see the way that he wanted to use sighted people to enhance his army's abilities, and it worked for the most part, but thankfully the hidden tribes came in and helped save the day. I think like that battle was really, really cool to see how they used the canyons or the trenches at the base there at the camp was really cool. And it seemed pretty realistic, like all really practical ways that would probably work. I'm often critical of battle tactics and stuff because I was in the military, so I'm kind of, obviously I'm not familiar with this kind of hand-to-hand combat, primitive, more medieval style combat, but it's still like, you can tell when some things just don't seem realistic. And of course I've seen plenty of videos on experts talking about what's realistic in a historical thing. I have a history degree as well, so I am interested in the historical accuracy of a lot of things. And of course this is a futuristic science fiction, but in terms of like medieval style battles, it seemed really good to use the trenches, and knowing that they were blind and people could walk through the trenches and not know that people were right above them, like hanging on and whipping them from above or whatever it was they were doing. Like, I thought that was great. And to use the fire in the one trench and then the ice in the other trench, I thought that was really cool. So yeah, it's really good, the action. And in season 3 as well, the action is quite good. They don't really have any large army battles. They kind of come close to one at the end, but you watch the finale, you know how it turns out. It's more of a couple people fighting off a lot of people, but it's a big finale. It's a more personal finale. It's a story about the characters first and foremost, which I like, and it's all really, really interesting. So like, some of the characters I like better, of course, Dave Bautista, Ito Voss, Toad, who like comes in. Not quite sure. I don't think he was in at the end of season 1. I think he came in at season 2, right? But like episode 1 or 2 of season 2, and yeah, he's a really good character. I like him. I like else was there? There was Charlotte. Yeah, she was great, and Lord Harlan. They all had great lines. They kind of spoke like more like modern people speak, and just they were funny as well. They were good. They were practical, and they were smart. And let me tell you, Queen Kane, she is bad. I hate her as a character. Actress Sylvia Hoeks does a great job playing a really bad person and a really arrogant villain. And it was great. It was like, how many times is this woman not gonna die? Like, why don't they just kill her already? But she keeps finding ways to finagle her way out of it, and it's fantastic. Tamakti Jun, I think it was a great character. I think as the Witchfinder General, I think he was a great, smart villain. That one line when he has Boots kind of threatens him in season 1, and he's like, "Don't think having vision makes you stronger than me. I've forgot more about killing than you will ever know." It's like, wow, that was cool. That was awesome. Although, then, later that episode or the next episode, when Boots stabs him in the chest, I'm like, after all that talk, you just let him stab you? And of course, he didn't go out that easily. But, it just seemed like he, I guess, he was a bit surprised because they were talking to Magra and Queen Kane, so there was some other stuff going on. He wasn't really paying attention for something like that. But, that goes again to Queen Kane for being devious, having a plan for so many things. So, it was just really interesting. And then, yeah, I really like the way the story progresses, the way they show the kind of the dichotomy between Kofun and Haniwa. Kofun is like, I liked it better when we were just a happy family. Everybody around us is blind. Like, vision doesn't define me. This is the way the world is. And then Haniwa doesn't get over. She always believes, like, vision defines me, and we need to use our vision to do something about it. And Kofun's like, we need to stop using the knowledge of the ancients because that's what built these bombs. That's what caused all this fighting. And Haniwa's like, well, they built the bombs. We don't have to do things like that. Whether she can actually avoid that or not, it's like, it's classic argument of when people have the power to do something, do they choose to do only good things with it or not, and stuff like that. So it's really interesting. And then the end, it's a bit confusing because it feels like it's incomplete. They don't completely resolve things, right? You don't know what happens, but that's fine. I think it's good that this show shows that the world carries on. Kofun, at the end, this is the finale. He makes the decision to blind himself. He's like, I've seen enough. I think that's a big decision. I don't know if he needed to go that far. I know that he appreciates all the blind people around him. He doesn't think his vision defines him, and he wants to live in the same world as his son. I think he could learn to use his senses the way blind people do. Maybe he could have worn a blindfold and, given it a week trial before deciding for sure. But, yeah, that's the decision he came to, and I think it speaks to his character. Whereas Haniwa goes out with Ren to find other sighted people, more, I don't know if they also call them more houses of enlightenment, which was, I recognize it as soon as they walked inside, is Grand Central in New York City. And then it's a bit more obvious once they get to like the main part with the clock tower in the middle. And yeah, it fits both of their characters, and they still go different ways, and they don't ever, completely come to an agreement on things, which I think is totally fine. And I think more shows and movies, should, not everybody needs to come to the same conclusion at the end. And they stay true to their characters, whether you like them or not. Now, I, honestly, most of the time, I liked Kofun better. I think him deciding to blind himself was a bit extreme. I think Haniwa was right. We didn't need to make the bombs, but at the same time, if this knowledge exists, someone's probably gonna want to make the bombs anyway. So I understand both of their sides, and a couple times when Haniwa was like, oh, you left us, or Papa left us, or Mama left us, when we were all scared and didn't know what was going on and things like that. Like, she has valid points there too. And it's interesting to see that, you know, they're not the only ones, and it's not just children of Jilla Morel, right? Of course we have Ren, so we know that other people gain vision, but with much more people than we thought that we had encountered. So yeah, I think it's really interesting, and you know, I think they leave those threads open so people could theorize of maybe a future season or something like that. I don't think they need another season. The story they wanted to tell has been told, and we know that this world continues. So I really liked it. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on it. Again, I give this an 8 out of 10. And yeah, I mean, I loved it. I would have loved if they kept making more, but I think the story was a good story. I much prefer a series to know when it's going to end and wrap things up with a strong story rather than going on and on and on, and you know, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're not that popular anymore, let's just cancel it. And then the show ends without them even planning to end it, or they gotta rush and come up with some crazy way to wrap it all up when they've tugged on too many threads already and they can't, you know, unravel everything in time. But I really liked it. I think it was good. The action is great. The visuals are great. It's a lot of spectacular locations. And yeah, I like I said, it's my type of genre, my type of interest, and I really liked it. So I hope you did too. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Next episode should be coming soon with Sean. We will be talking about She-Hulk and Miss Marvel a bit, as well as some Marvel stuff in general. I believe last episode I said that that would be the next episode. I did not expect the season finale to come out last night, which was Thursday night. It's supposed to come Friday, but I guess if it came out in somewhere else on Friday, then it came out here already, you know what I mean? So yeah, I saw this sooner than expected, and I wanted to record this. So thank you for listening. If you'd like to, you can please like, share, subscribe, and help spread the word of this podcast. And you know, if you have any feedback on the video, if you watched it, please let me know, and I can work on improving this. And with Sean, hopefully we will be recording both of our videos as well, putting them together. So thank you for listening.